You're watching the Real Football Network. I'm John Pollard, and this is Real Football Analytics. We wanted to talk a little bit about defending Aaron Rodgers. Opposing defenses have a very difficult time trying to figure out how to stop Aaron, or at least try to slow him down. In the last couple of weeks, the prevailing wisdom is that Aaron struggled as he's played against the San Francisco 49ers and the St. Louis Rams. The truth of the matter is, Aaron Rodgers completed 68.8% of his passes against the 49ers and 63.3% of his passes against the St. Louis Rams. Nevertheless, he was challenged a differentiated way, and we wanted to get into the numbers to discuss how that is. And that is how teams are getting out of their base defense and implementing more nickel and dime packages. Now let's take a look at the 49ers defensive personnel profile for the first 5 weeks of the season. What you're looking at here is a chart that shows the base defense being the number one personnel package the 49ers employ throughout the season. 94 total plays of all their defensive plays have been run out of their base 3-4 defense. As you move down the chart, you see that the nickel, the 2-4-5 configuration, and the nickel 3-3-5 are the second and third personnel packages they employ. And then, of course, in the fourth place, the dime package with that 6 defensive back. The 49ers have implemented that throughout the season as well. And as you look at this, the percentages of when they implement these, it's pretty even distribution amongst the 3-4, the 2-4-5 nickel, and the dime package in that low to high 20% of the time when they're on the field from a defensive perspective. You can also see that they mix in the blitz across all of those personnel packages with some impact, with a 30% impact in the 3-4, a 20% impact in the 3-3-5, and a 37.5% impact out of the dime. Now again, blitz impact is when the team blitzes and they either sack the quarterback, create a pressure, stuff the running back, or intercept the ball. So that's a pretty good ratio of impact when they blitz out of these personnel packages. Now again, this is the profile for the 49ers for the entire season. Let's look what they did in terms of prescription for the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. As we look at this, you can see they ran the nickel 2-4-5 configuration 44 plays during the entire game. That's a 36% increase over the frequency of when they implement that same nickel package when they play other opponents. Pretty interesting stuff. Also, their base 3-4, they increased that at 14.6%, specifically against Green Bay. Obviously, to defend against Eddie Lacy, they have to pick the time when they think the run's going to come when they put that base package on there. And we thought this was interesting. The dime package, which teams do implement against some of the best quarterbacks to put that 6 defensive back out there and clog up the passing lanes, the 49ers actually reduced the frequency of dime package a little more than 4% less than their typical frequency in implementing the dime. Now, we can talk a little bit about the blitz. The 49ers during the season, they're 14th in the league in blitz frequency. That's 22.3% of their total defensive plays they blitz. And against Green Bay, they reduced that frequency to 18.5. This is a typical prescription that we see defenses play or employ when they play better quarterbacks, because those really seasoned quarterbacks know the checkdowns, get rid of the ball very quickly, and tend to eat up the blitz. And so what the 49ers did was reduce the amount of blitzing they did against Aaron Rodgers. Okay, now let's take a look at the St. Louis Rams defensive personnel profile for the first 5 weeks of the season. As you can see, significantly different than what the San Francisco 49ers implement. The nickel 4-2-5 configuration is the most frequented defensive personnel package employed by the St. Louis Rams. They also blitz out of this nickel package 25% of the time. Dime is their second most frequented personnel package, implemented 109 times throughout the season. Something that really jumped out at us when you look at the dime. Greg Williams is the defensive coordinator for the St. Louis Rams. He's known for his exotic blitzes and blitzing with high frequency. Greg Williams is blitzing 50% of the time when the St. Louis Rams implement the dime package. And as you can see, the base 4-3 is actually the third most implemented personnel package by the St. Louis Rams. Now we're looking at what the St. Louis Rams did against Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. Again, what Greg Williams did, he narrowed down the personnel packages from a defensive perspective to 3 different packages, and dime was run 48 plays. 81.4% of all defensive snaps was run out of dime. That was meant to confuse Aaron Rodgers, clog those passing lanes, and force him to throw into tight windows and find open receivers. As you can see, that's almost a 50% increase over the typical frequency of dime implemented by the St. Louis Rams year to date. They also increased their base 3-4 a bit to 13.6%, and that nickel 4-2-5 package, you could almost guess the St. Louis Rams are thinking, well, maybe Green Bay expects us to run this nickel. We're going to reduce that completely and flip over to dime. He reduced the nickel implementation, almost 50% less than they had throughout their previous 4 games. Pretty interesting stuff. And as you can also see, he reduced the blitz frequency across all 3 personnel packages, again, making Aaron look for open receivers and clogged lanes and throw into tight windows. One thing about the Rams too, throughout the season, the Rams are the most frequented blitzing defense in the league. 33.6% of their plays, their total plays, they blitz. Against Green Bay, they actually took it up a little bit to 36.8%. This is actually the antithesis of what we see typically when a team plays a high-profile quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. Now, to borrow a phrase, you can't stop Aaron Rodgers, you can only hope to contain him. And what does that mean for his next opponent? It's the San Diego Chargers going to Green Bay to face Aaron Rodgers. Now, San Diego is ranked near the bottom of the league in creating quarterback pressures and sacks. They also have only run dime 19% of the time so far year to date. So defensive coordinator John Pagano is really going to have to try to implement a unique scheme to defend against Aaron Rodgers. Perhaps the only way you can contain Aaron Rodgers is to nickel and dime him. For Real Football Analytics, I'm John Pollard.